if you are engaging in topical Bible study, and by topical, I mean that you are going to be teaching on a particular topic in the Bible as opposed to being assigned a specific passage to study from. Let me give you an example. The Sunday school curriculum, it is organized topical, but each individual lesson, the scriptures are already provided. And so we are, in that regard, doing an exposition. We're exposing what that passage says, but the passage has already been determined. And when you study topically, the passage is not already determined. You're looking at a topic and trying to find out everything that the Bible has to say on that particular topic. And so using good Bible study methods, you would search on your topic, and one of the easiest ways to do that is either through the concordance in the back of the Bible. These are very limited, so it's not going to do you a whole lot of good, but it would at least get you started. Any good Bible may have a concordance in the back, and you look up the word and they show you where all the verses are. And the more extravagant you are with that, a big concordance or some type of electronic software, you can just put in the word patience, and boom, every place in the Bible. With a developing framework of the Bible, that's a good place to begin, because you want to know what the Bible has to say about the topic versus other sources of information. And so when I decided maybe about 6 weeks ago, it was probably June or so when these topics for the summer really kind of settled in my mind and spirit about patience. When it was time to get to the nitty-gritty, I was looking at all of these passages that spoke about patience, and there's just a ton of them. But this passage, it spoke to me. And there were some that were similar, but there was something about this paragraph. It just, sometimes when you're in sync with the Lord and you're preparing to communicate to his people, he'll just grab you and say, that's it. And you'll know, because it just takes hold of you. And good Bible study is not just the how-to part. That's the science of Bible study. But the art of Bible study is the fluid spiritual part, where sometimes it's not you choosing, it's almost more of the text is choosing you through the Lord. And for me, I just keep going back to it. I look at other passages. Let me come back to that one. Let me see what all the rest of them say, but that one's in my, and I kept coming back to this passage 2 or 3 times in my study, and then I started to read it, observe it, and then I was like, it just grabbed me. So the book of Hebrews, one of the more challenging books of the New Testament, chapter 10, 35 through 39. So originally, it was just verse 36. That was, even though in the ESV, the word patience is not there, the word endurance was there, even though it didn't have the actual word, it was clearly describing what the word meant. And I was like, that's it, that verse. And then something else happened. Can you guess what else happened? I read the verse before it.
Right, right.
Then you read it after.
I read the verse after it. I was like, oh, this is getting even better. And then I found a whole paragraph. And I was like, oh, that's it right there. That's exactly how it happened. Remember I told you you have to determine the unit of thought. And sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a phrase, sometimes it's a verse. And I said the primary unit of thought in the Bible is the paragraph. You remember me saying that?
Mm-hmm.
The primary unit of thought in the Bible is the paragraph. And in this case, I started with the verse, I ended up with the paragraph, and I was like, yes, that's it. And then next thing you know it, the Lord just started speaking to me. And I was just, oh man, this is awesome. I was like a kid in a candy store. So I put it on your handouts differently this time, and highlighted some things differently because I think it'll help us to see, to observe better. And I did some markings just to guide our observations, because this is a trick that sometimes I'll do. If I write them out verse by verse and I leave enough space, then I can get my pen and pencil and I'll start, oh, this is this, and I'll circle it too and draw a line. And, oh, this is a key word here, and oh, I got this therefore over here, and then if you give yourself enough space and everything isn't so jumbled together and you spread it out, you can see better and you can write. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That is a great tip about studying the Bible. Okay, here's the text, ESV. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. So anybody got another version?
King James.
Go ahead.
Cast not away, therefore, your confidence, which has great recompense of reward.
Recompense.
Okay, that's a promise. Okay. For ye have need of patience, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he that shall come will come, and not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back until perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul.
That's some hard stuff in there, boy, I tell you. Somebody else got another version?
The New King James
Go ahead.
reads, therefore do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. For ye have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul.
Wow. Whew. It's deep waters, y'all. So, interesting, from the ESV to the King James and the New King James, it went from endurance to patience. And from ESV to King James and New King James, it went from do not throw away to do not cast away. And there may be a different imagery between throwing and casting. when I hear casting, I think about fishing. And when you're casting, you are trying to get it as far as humanly possible. And just the slight changes in reading this version from this version starts to give you nuance. And so those are just some different thoughts. But it's a particular note that one version said endurance and one said patience. We'll put a pin in that, and we're going to have some more interesting discoveries about how a word in the original Greek language can mean different words in the English language and translated differently from this version of the Bible to this version of the Bible. And what that tells us is, if we want to be as accurate as we can possibly be, it's best to go back to the original word that was written in the Greek. Start there. Does that make sense? Especially if you got two different words that are supposed to be communicating the same word, but one Bible says it this way, one Bible says it this way. And if you just think patience means this and endurance means that, in this case, there's got to be something that's synonymous. But in other cases, there may be another Greek word in the Bible that it may be translated patience or endurance, and it might be a separate word than this word.
In 38, it said, any man draw back, and I think you said one man, one, if any one.
If anyone draws back.
Right, and mine said any man. Then what did ESV say?
If he,
Okay, it said if he shrinks.
if he shrinks back. And if we were to read the NIV, it would be even different. So when I look at three different versions, sometimes, even though King James and New King James are different, I'll try to get something very different, like NIV,
Right.
King James or New King James,
Yeah.
and then ESV or New American Standard. Because I want broader range, not two that are kind of similar. So anyways, I organized our observations a little bit differently this time. And the first observation is, last week we talked about, well, we have to know what a proverb is, and we talked about the Bible has different types of literature and that kind of stuff. So I just thought I'd start with the obvious, because of the challenging nature of this passage about Hebrews. And we know something about Hebrews because we have studied an introduction to every book of the Bible. And we know that Hebrews was written to second generation New Testament believers who needed to know that Jesus Christ was superior, so that they would take hold of Jesus Christ and not resort back to Judaism. That's what we know about the book of Hebrews. Hey,
Hey everybody.
how you is?
Hello.
All right.
What would you say if I told you we only got two left?
We'll take them. If somebody come, we'll share.
So that's what we know about Hebrews. So that's going to guide us, just understanding that he's writing to these second generation believers, and they don't need to resort back to what they have been delivered from because of Jesus Christ. They need to take hold of Jesus Christ and move forward in their relationship with him, and not go back to what they've been delivered out of. And so they have a heavy understanding of the Old Testament. They have a heavy understanding of the Old Testament. So that's what we know about the book of Hebrews. And so then there are four pretty important questions. Who, and we already answered one of them. Who is this verse written to? It's written to those second generation believers. And we know a little bit about them. We know it's written to encourage them to move forward in their relationship with Jesus Christ and not resort back to Judaism. And so, what specifically does he tell these second generation Jewish believers to do?
Don't throw away what you know, what you've learned.
Right. Don't cast away your confidence. And, you know, again, casting is, he's saying, no matter what goes on, don't allow yourself to be separated from what you know. And here's one of our key words that I highlighted for you in yellow is confidence. And confidence is a boldness, and it comes from freedom without fear. That's kind of what it means in this biblical text. That they have a freedom in God, and it's not bound up by fear. They can go to him at any time. They can call upon him at any time. And they don't have to be scared of any circumstance or the devil himself, because they can boldly go to God. And he's telling them, don't you lose that. Why would he tell them, don't lose that? Probably because there are circumstances that might cause them to lose that. And he's telling them, don't allow that to happen. Don't allow stuff to cause you to become fearful or go back to what you've been delivered from. Keep going boldly to God, no matter what. That's important, and that's the what. We're on the same page?
Mm-hmm.
So we got the who, and now we got the what. And why does he tell them, don't throw away your confidence? Well, first, because they may have a tendency to do so. Yeah. But what's in it for them if they don't throw away their confidence?
A great reward.
A reward. We talked about last week how God loves us and he wants what's best for us. You can see that right here in this text here. He doesn't want them to lose their reward. And that's not made up. That comes right from the passage.
I will not be pleased with him.
Right. And even before that, you may receive what is promised. And if you do what I'm telling you don't do, you ain't gonna please me. Y'all see that?
Mm-hmm.
In verse 38? So he gives them a lot of reasons why they should not throw away their confidence, why they should remain bold and not be fearful no matter what. Because the reward is at stake, pleasing God is at stake. Whatever this persevering of the soul means, that's at stake. And he's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
He gave them 4 reasons why you need to keep on being bold and not shrink in fear and go back to what you used to know and do all those things that Jesus Christ delivered you out of. And he gives them plenty of reasons just by asking questions of the text to answer the question, why should we remain bold? Why should we not throw away our confidence? So we got the who, we got the what, we got the why, and here's the $1 million question. How can they not throw away their confidence?
Live by faith.
Live by faith. And endure. There it is right there. That's how they hang on to their boldness. They need patience. And the only way they're going to have patience is by faith. Y'all see that in the text?
Okay.
It's all right there. All you got to do is be trained on how to look at the text and let whatever's there speak to you. So he says, what you need is some endurance, or the King James, some patience. Whatever that word means, that's how you don't throw away your confidence. That's how you don't get scared. That's how you're going to end up pleasing the Lord. That's how you're going to receive your reward. That's how you're going to preserve your soul, is by patience. So the command is don't throw away your confidence. But the lesson for me is not on what, it's on how. We could have been looking at this passage and we could have been talking about confidence. And there was a whole lot that could be said about confidence. And here's another point, by the way. When you're studying the Bible and you're studying a particular passage, you'll discover, we could study this passage and we could be talking about confidence. We could study this passage and we could be talking about patience. We could study this passage and we could be talking about the coming of Jesus Christ. And there are a lot of different themes that run in this passage, but for me, how you're going to do what God tells you to do is the thing that stuck out to me when I knew that I needed to preach on patience, because I knew the people at Antioch need patience. And I said, well, the best way for me to do that is not just to tell them to be patient, but to tell them this is the answer to what you need, which is confidence. Does that make sense? So I already had patience in my mind, but when I was looking at all those passages that talk about patience, the reason that this one stuck out to me is because it started out with patience, and if I was just talking about patience, I would have just preached on verse 36. But the context of patience is what spoke to me. He says, do this, but in order to do this, what you need is some patience. So it answers the question, why do we need to be patient when sometimes it's the hardest thing to do? And the answer is so that we can remain confident. Does that make sense? That's good Bible study, y'all. That's good Bible study. So now we got the who, we got some stuff about Hebrews, we got the who, the what, the why, the how. And then the second observation is, it begins,
That's it right there.
begins with therefore.
We gotta go back.
We
gotta go back.
We gotta go
Therefore
back.
what?
But, so when I was spreading the verses out so that I could see them each verse separately more clearly, I made another observation. Each verse in the paragraph begins with a connecting word. Y'all see that? Therefore, for, but. So that means one thought
Mhm.
leads to the next thought, leads to the next thought, leads to the next thought. So when you see therefore, you can write right above that, go back. And we're actually going to go back to verse 32. So you can just write, go back to verse 32 right above it. And then that 4 in verse 36 that I highlighted in blue, y'all see that?
Mhm.
You can write right above it, because. And then that 4 in verse 37 that I highlighted in blue, you can write because. And these 2 buts, verse 38 and verse 39, you can write right above that, contrast. So, let's put it all together. Verse 32 starts off, but recall the former days when, after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew that you yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one. Therefore, don't be scared, because you done already
Already dealt with all that.
been through the flood and the fire. You done already been through all of these trials. Don't go back now. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So you know why he's saying, don't stop being bold now. Saying, y'all done come all this way. You done been through this, you done been through that. You close to the end of it all. Don't give up now. And he says you've been through all of that, therefore keep on being bold. Don't throw away. He's using the opposite to tell them to do the thing that he's telling them not to do. Keep on being bold. Keep on being confident. Don't be scared of circumstances, because you done already demonstrated your faith. As my daddy would say, keep on keeping on. Does that make sense? So when you back up, you get the fuller picture. So there you go. It begins with therefore, and then he quotes the Old Testament. So how do you know that this is a quote from the Old Testament in verses 37 and 38? How would you know that if you didn't know? Oh, I recognize that from Isaiah and Habakkuk. How would you know that these are Old Testament quotes?
That's
Say again?
what's the word? The
Yes. The quotes
quotes.
in your text indicate this is a direct quote from someplace else in the Bible. Or it's a direct quote from what somebody said. In this case, it's a direct quote from the Old Testament. I told y'all they had a heavy dependence on the Old Testament because these were 2nd century believers, and they had all this Jewish stuff all up in them. And so he spoke their language to lead them forward and not to take them back. So in my Bible, you got all the stuff that's said, and then when you get to these Old Testament quotes, see how much different it looks? It's in quotations, and it appears differently in the Bible. And a good Bible will clue you in just by what you see, how it's printed. And you see the quotes, and you see the different type of font that it is, and so, oh, that's a quote.
Mine shows an R, like a reference.
Oh yeah, right at the end.
Yeah.
Back up 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Or you may have a little
No,
letter,
tells you where.
and then you go down and you see the key, and then the verse is down at the bottom, the cross-reference. Y'all see that in your Bibles? You're not gonna get that in no pew Bible.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
No, in your study Bible. You're not gonna get no notes and little smaller letters above, and then you go down and you see the code. You need a study Bible. That's why pastors say bring your Bibles to church. We're looking at this screen.
We're gonna get it one day.
So then you know it's a quote. And then he's quoting the Old Testament, and then you go, oh, these people, that's what they was raised off of, the Old Testament. But the Old Testament is really pointing them to Jesus. And then you go, I got it. And so you see that. And then this next observation is verse 39. It was, in my observation, an unanswered question. So I just noted it in the observation stage. What does that mean? Does it mean if I'm not exercising faith, that I'm going to be destroyed and my relationship with the Lord is gone, and the only way to maintain my relationship with the Lord is for me to keep on having faith? That's the question that I'm asking when I read this. What does that's because the Bible says God so loved the world, gave his only begotten Son, whoever believed in him will not perish. But this says, if you shrink back, you're going to be perished. Can't be two different things. So what does this mean? So here's the rule of thumb. This is extremely important, especially when you're looking at passages in Hebrews. The passages in the Bible that are clear and obvious guide you to understanding the passages in the Bible that are difficult. Use what you know to help you understand what's hard to understand. So if we know shall not perish but have everlasting life, if we know John 10, they're in my Father's hands and they'll never perish and no one will take them out of my hands, and the Father's hands are in my hand, and if you know that the Bible says that once you're saved, you're always saved, and you look at this passage and it says we're not of those who shrink back or destroyed, you have to come to the conclusion the Bible ain't saying two different things. Obviously, there's something here that I'm not fully understanding, because that would contradict what it clearly says, shall not perish. So it can't be destroyed here and shall not perish over there if they're talking about the same thing. It's an unanswered question, and it needs an answer. And we're not answering it here. We're just observing, what's up with that? And then when we get to our interpretation stage and we correlate with other places in the Bible, then it starts to become a little bit more clear. But don't just jump on the bandwagon because something says what it says when in the back of your mind, you know, well, that don't match up with this over here. If that happens, you need to be saying, huh, what's up with that? So, if it seems like a contradiction, I'm wrong somewhere.
Isn't that what some believe, though?
That is exactly what some believe.
Is that where it comes from?
And people who believe the Bible teaches that you can lose your salvation, there are about 2 or 3 passages in the book of Hebrews that they will point to and says, see, this is what it says. But then you'll say, well, wait a minute. It can't mean this over here and the opposite over here. Something wrong. And use the clear passages to guide you in the difficult passages. Start with the clear. And if there's a contradiction, well, this says this says this. Both can't be right. And if it says shall never perish, there can't be anything in the Bible that would say that you're going to be destroyed. Like you're going to lose your salvation. That can't be the case. So either I'm misunderstanding John 3:16, which seems to be very clear. And if I am, then there's a whole, then the Pandora's box is open and everything goes. But I'm trying to tell you, if we had time, we look at Hebrews 6, we look at Hebrews 9, and we look at those passages, and they'll be like, whoa, wait a minute. But if you understand who Hebrews was written to, and what the context is, and what the main purpose is to go forward in your relationship with Jesus Christ, is not to say that your works are going to inherit your salvation. It's about moving forward, and Jesus is superior than all this stuff, so why go back to all this stuff? It can't mean lose your salvation. It means go back to this former way of thinking and living. Why would you do that when you already have gotten the better for Jesus Christ? It's not saying you can lose your salvation. Say, don't go back to that former thinking. You've been delivered from that. You've been set free. You need to go forward here because there ain't nothing to go back to. So if you understand Hebrews as a whole, then you can't be picking out certain verses of Hebrews and not understand the reason why the book is there and try to make it say something that it ain't intended to say, especially when it contradicts something else that's clear. That's why this is a hard passage. So, how you feel about what the text says? Got some pretty significant words: confidence, endurance, destroyed. Those seem to be significant words. We got the so then you got these blue highlights. Therefore, because of everything he just said about them going through hard times and hanging on to their faith, he's telling them, don't quit now. Your reward is coming. For what you need is endurance, and we're going to find out what that means in a second, so that you can get the reward. Apparently, no patience, no reward. Apparently, patience leads to reward. No patience, no reward. And I suspect that's going to be a significant point for the congregation on Sunday, to make the connection between patience and rewards. Not that rewards are our motivator. We ought to do what's right because it's right. However, rewards,
Right.
they are depending on your level of faith development. You know, having a clean house is a internal desire, but back in the day, not getting a whooping help
Was
the
a
job
better,
get done.
Right.
There's different levels of maturity, and rewards play into that spectrum of faith development. So for some, I don't want to lose my reward. I better be patient. And for some, I better be patient because I'm not where I used to be. And I'm stronger. So it's going to hit different people different ways.
Right.
And it's in there, so we can't ignore rewards. Because for some, getting that reward, that elementary level of faith, if I do this, I'm going to get this. When it's all over and I see Jesus face to face, I'm going to get this. And even for mature people, sometimes to know that the Lord is watching and He's keeping the books and all is down here. As long as He sees what's going on, as long as I know He's going to make it right in the end, you can keep on talking about me. I'm waiting for the yeah. Who was that guy what was that song, The Big Payback? He read the Bible apparently. So, interpretation, now we know what it says, now we got to dig in. And we kind of got a lot of it just by observing the text. The more you observe the text, the easier the interpretation gets. So that you can get the reward, because I'm in verse 37. Now I substituted the word because when you see the word for. Because Jesus is coming. He will not delay. Unlike the people who throw away their confidence, the people that have been justified, made right by God, they live by faith, not fear. And that's we're going to get to that in a second. This is a literary device. He's saying the opposite to enforce what he's trying to communicate. That's the only way to please God. It's by faith. You can't please God throwing away your confidence. You can't please God by not hanging in there. And then, unlike them, we're the people that we keep holding on to Jesus. In the Baptist choir, I will trust in. That's what we do. What they do, something different. But we keep on trusting in the Lord, no matter what. No matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like, no matter who said this, no matter what the devil whispered in your ear. Don't matter. We, because we've been justified by our faith, and we are holding on to our confidence and boldness, and we are learning to hang in there. We're going to keep on going. And we're not going to stop now. And that's, when you understand these connecting words, it gives you the flow of the argument. That's all I'm trying to say. And you can almost rephrase it just by interpreting those connecting words. Okay, interpretation. A good observation is you're more than halfway there. So we already know the background of the passage. We already know the significant words. We talked about confidence being boldness and not fear, freedom to go to God, to trust in God, to hang on to Him no matter what. We know destroyed can't mean lose your salvation, because that would contradict what John 3:16 says and other passages in the Bible. And so, but we do need to find out this endurance thing. So let's go to the back and let's look at this endurance. So every place where that Greek word was used in the Bible is on your paper here. That exact same word in that exact same way. And you can see, sometimes it says patience, sometimes it says endurance, sometimes it says steadfastness, sometimes it says patient endurance. But it's the same Greek word, and it's got the same meaning. No matter what English word is used, it's the same word. And I thought that that was interesting. So sometimes you got to go back to what is the original word and what does that mean. 'Cause you ain't getting me tripped up by causing me to think patience, endurance, and steadfastness are all different. They're all different English words, but it's the same word in the Greek. And we're not going to try to pronounce it because we're just not going to do that. It don't matter how you pronounce it. What does it mean is at the bottom. Basic attitude or frame of mind. It is a frame of mind. It is a disposition. As steadfast adherence to a course of action despite the difficulties. Whoa. It means keep on doing what you've been doing. And look at number 3, with a component of hope and expectation. We already know
Waiting on a reward.
what verse 36 says. So endurance must mean keep on trusting in God because you know what's coming. That's what it means. Whether it says patience, endurance, steadfastness, no matter what the English word says, we know what it means. It means keep on doing the right thing. Keep trusting in God. Keep doing good works. Don't get I'm going to say don't get discouraged. But even if you do get discouraged, you still need to keep on doing. You still need to keep trusting in God because you know what's coming. That's what patience means. To have that frame of mind that I'm going to keep on trusting God even though circumstances are going on because I know the outcome.
That makes sense.
Boy,
That helps.
that's a whole
That
lot of good
helps.
stuff right
Yeah.
there. And we learned that from the word study. We learned that from the word study. And that literary device in verse 38 is saying the opposite to emphasize the same thing. But the righteous shall live by faith. If he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. It's using the negative to reinforce the positive. Romans 5:1 says, just shall live by faith. Hebrews 11:6, but without faith,
Impossible.
it is impossible to please God. That's the only way to please him. So he's encouraging them to go forward. He's not warning them you're going to lose your salvation if you get scared and stop trusting God. That can't be what it means, because that would go against everything else we know about the scriptures and about God. And that helps us clue us in on how to interpret verse 39. That destruction cannot mean destruction of your salvation, because that would contradict a whole lot of things in the Bible, a whole lot of verses, and our growing understanding of the character of God would all come into question. I mean, his love would come into question, his mercy would come into question. I mean, it can't, that destroy cannot mean I'm going to come to ruin and everything with me and God, I blew it, and now I'm going to hell.
Isn't it kind of saying though, we are not of those extreme facts? It's already put us in two categories. There's believers and non-believers. So it's not It's like he's not talking to the believers when he's saying this. He's saying it's two camps. It's a believer's camp and a non-believer's camp. And we don't do what they do, so they gonna perish. Right? And that's what happened, right?
Y'all agree with that interpretation?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He says we are not of those.
Right.
We got budding theologians up in here, up in here. So let's see what the experts say. The experts say this. Verse 39. Then he affirmed, but we're not of those who shrink back and are destroyed. Here the original text has an emphatic we, which Rick just pointed out, which the writer might have intended as an editorial we, of which he was quite fond. Then he would mean, as far as I'm concerned, I am determined not to shrink back and experience the ruin which divine retribution would bring. I don't know if I completely agree with that, but he goes on. The words are destroyed reflect the Greek word apolia, which can refer either to temporal or eternal ruin. This context, the former is correct. Now talking about eternal ruin, temporal ruin. So there's a lot you can lose without losing your salvation if you don't maintain your faith in difficulty. You can lose your ability to be a witness for other people. And that's a major loss.
Would the same be losing joy?
You could lose joy. You very well could. You could lose hope. There's a lot of things that could be destroyed if you don't keep on doing the right thing. But he's not talking about your salvation.
So in some ways you suffer while you're here for that, but then you still have the ability.
You got it. You got it.
So when we hear all these false witnesses talking about Hebrews, pointing those scriptures out, we know they're taken out of context.
Exactly. There's trying to lift up the verse and not the whole context of what Hebrews is about it to begin with. You're exactly correct. So there you have it. Destroyed can mean eternal or temporal. And in this case, it can't mean eternal because that would contradict everything else. But there's other things you can lose if you don't maintain your faith in the Lord. You're not going to use your relationship with Him. You can lose your hope. You can lose your joy. You can lose your witness. There's a lot of things that could be. You lose your heavenly reward.
Right.
You're going to make it in because of Jesus, but you're going to lose the reward that was reserved for you because you didn't hang in there.
Okay, I'm confused about that one.
Rewards are based upon works. Our relationship and the fact that Christ has dealt with sin allows us to have relationship and be in heaven. And you can still be saved but lose your reward because you didn't have patience, because you abandoned the course, because you stopped trusting in God and you started acting in fear, and you lose out on the ability to not just be a witness, but to be a positive Christian example in the lives of other people. You can lose that, but you still have a relationship with Him. My kids are my kids, no matter how they act.
Right.
Right.
But depending on how they act, they miss out on some stuff.
Right.
But they still my kids. Does that make sense, Ms. Moon?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are rewards in heaven for how we live on earth. But if you accepted Jesus Christ, you in the family. God can be happy, mad, glad, or sad with our behavior, just like we can with our kids. But they still our kids, no matter what. I heard a preacher one time say God's got some bad kids. I appreciate it. It just stuck in my mind. They his, but sometimes he got some bad kids. Sometimes they don't act right. Sometimes they miss out on the Lord's blessings. You can miss out on the Lord's blessings on earth, and you can miss out on some of the blessings he has in store for you in heaven because you shrunk back. But you still belong to him.
Would that statement be true, Reverend, if, we come to a point in our lives where we recognize where we should have done what we
Oh, yes.
and then, if we had done, think of what the reward that we have missed
Yes.
on this side. of the
Yeah,
road.
on this side.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ability to be a positive example, and the Lord is merciful, but you realize, oh man, I could have done so much more. I could have had a better impact. Could have set a positive example. I could have encouraged somebody
Yeah.
instead of just another reason why I don't want to fool around with them church folk. That's how I act.
Yeah.
And you can lose
Yeah.
out. And all those things could be ruined, but not your relationship with the Lord. Yeah. That's a great, understanding verse 39 is crucial. I'm not gonna spend a whole lot of time on it in the sermon because I'm gonna stick to what I'm trying to stick to is why we need to be patient. And now, from the understanding of the word, now we know how to be patient. It's through our actions to stay the course. And that's kind of where that steadfast word kind of comes in, where you see it sometimes as steadfast. And the endurance part has to do with time. The steadfast part kind of speaks to doing the same actions over a long period of time. So you can kind of see where sometimes you may use endurance, sometimes you may use steadfast. If you understand the full meaning of the word, then you can be like, oh, I get it. Yeah, yeah. So this is Hebrews is it ain't for the baby believers. he got to die. It's deep waters. And Pastor Banks would say, Doc, that's some heavy lifting.
So is that what the Catholics, like, a lot of times on Catholic religion, they believe in like deeds give you rewards. They kind of got it mixed up. So deeds don't get you in; they can get you some of your rewards when you get.
That is exactly correct. And a misunderstanding of that could cause you to believe that you earn your salvation, or you can be proud and act like you deserve for the Lord to bless you. It leads to pride. It leads to pride, confidence in self as opposed to confidence in God. Yeah.
Then you get mad when God don't come through on something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. See, he just connected last sermon to this sermon.
And I will not be doing the class.
You ready?
Y'all see what's going on?
I'm the accountant. That's all. I'm the accountant.
So I would like to nominate.
Did we say you read the thing before and you read after?
Right.
You read right after into 11.
Right into chapter 11.
Yes.
Just faith is substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things
That's
not
how you
seen.
keep the faith. And I
All
always
of
tell
these
you what
examples of
faith is.
faith. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. And that's how endurance is done, is through faith. Keep on doing the right thing, even though you don't see the evidence of it. That's how endurance happens. You can't be enduring looking at stuff. You gotta look at the finish line. Which is why in chapter 12, he talks about that. About him being the author of our faith, and for the joy that was set before him, he looked past the stuff and he looked to what was, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. That's why it goes from chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12. Yeah. Ooh, I'm gonna talk about y'all. Y'all all right with me, boy.
That's the doctor over there.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes,
Well, let's
sir.
start on this, Robert. You know, in many narratives, like this particular narrative we're talking about,
Mm-hmm,
is a connection from what he done in the previous chapter,
mm-hmm,
and just, it's a flow.
mm-hmm.
And he then.
Building his argument meticulously.
He presents the argument, say, in this 1 through 34, 32 or something,
Mm-hmm,
then gives the answer.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He builds up, therefore, boom.
Yeah. And this is the reason.
He talks about that endurance, and then chapter 11, boom, this is
Good.
how you
Make
endure.
sure
You need
understand.
faith.
That's all of my faith.
And then in chapter 12, after he talks about all that faith, then he says, then, once you got that, then you can keep looking at Jesus. Glory, hallelujah.
Mm.
This is a good book, y'all. My new favorite.
One of your favorites?
You gotta work hard to get to the good stuff. Yeah, you gotta dig down deep to get the treasures out of Hebrews, but they're there. So anyways, that's where we're at. That's what the sermon is about. And the title of the sermon, I wasn't gonna tell y'all, but I can keep it. The title of the sermon Sunday is The Necessary Non-Ingredient.
See that, man?
The necessary non-ingredient. That's the title of the sermon.
Now that I know what you're talking about, I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
You think?
Shoot. I understand the topic.
Yeah, you understand the
I
text.
can fill in that blank of what you're saying. I put that word in the equation.
See, y'all are thinking.
So now you're trying to trick us. Okay.
Well, you gotta come and find out. Necessary non-ingredient.
Necessary non-ingredient.
You gotta wait.